Hello and welcome to the Book Summary Podcast, where we explore key insights from great books. Today we're diving into the world of Mindy Kaling, and her book is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me and Other Concerns.
Goofing.
It's a collection of essays and anecdotes where she kind of reflects on everything from romance to friendships to Hollywood and just her life experiences in general.
Yeah, it's a really fun read.
Yeah, and it's interesting how she explicitly says this isn't like your typical celebrity advice book.
Right.
She even pokes fun at those kinds of books.
Yeah.
But she's also really open about not having it all figured out.
Yeah, she's like, look, I'm a mess, but I'm also living my dreams.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's very self-aware and honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
So for our deep dive today, we're going to kind of unpack some of her most relatable and humorous observations.
Yeah.
And, we're looking for those like quick but thorough insights, those
Yes.
aha moments that'll leave you thinking without making you feel like you just sat through a lecture.
Right.
So to kick things off, let's talk about something that I think a lot of people can relate to, and that is body image and self-perception.
Yeah, for sure.
Mindy is really upfront about, her lifelong awareness of not being thin.
Right.
And she even starts the book with this hilarious anecdote about her sole claim to skinny fame, which was being a 6-pound baby.
Yeah, I love that.
It's just so funny and relatable because, a lot of us have those pictures of ourselves as kids where we're like, oh, I was so tiny then.
Totally.
And then, life happens.
Right, exactly.
And she goes on to define different weight categories in her own words.
Yeah.
Like chubby, which she says is someone who could stand to lose a few pounds but is still, lovable.
Yeah, very specific.
Yeah. And then there's chubster, which is like a step up from chubby. And then fatso, which is even more so.
And then the infamous fatas, right?
All right, fata.
Which is interesting because it's not always about actual physical size.
Yeah, she explains that in the office writer's room, fatas was more of a term for like laziness or incompetence.
Right, it was like an insult, but not necessarily about weight.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about context. And speaking of context, there's this really telling story about Douante Diallo, who is this popular basketball player from Senegal.
Oh, yeah.
And he basically took it upon himself to give young Mindy some unsolicited weight loss advice.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it really affected her.
Yeah.
Like, it made her start to think about her body in a more self-conscious way.
Yeah, because here's this, admired figure telling her she needs to lose weight.
Right, and it's interesting how she remembers the janitor actually being the one to offer her kindness during that time.
Ah.
Yeah, it shows that support can come from unexpected places.
For sure.
But even after that experience, her relationship with dieting remained kind of complicated.
Right.
She even admits to loving, total garbage kid-friendly food.
Who doesn't?
I know, right? Like those Dunkaroos.
Oh my God, Jess.
So relatable.
Totally.
But what I found really insightful was her evolving perspective on being called chubby.
Oh yeah, what was that?
She says that eventually it bothered her less than being called out for her intelligence or her humor.
Interesting.
It shows a shift in her self-acceptance and where she places value.
Yeah, like she's saying my worth isn't tied to my size.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So I think it's a good reminder for all of us to think about, what labels have stuck with us and whether they still have the same power over us today.
Yeah, good point.
Now let's move on to her childhood and adolescence, because she has some really vivid stories about those times.
Okay.
One thing that really stood out to me was how she used to avoid sports and chores by pretending to be completely absorbed in books.
Oh, sneaky.
I know, right? She even mentions Little House on the Prairie as her go-to literary shield.
Clever girl.
And then there's the story of learning to ride a bike at the age of 12.
Oh, wow, that's late.
Yeah, it's pretty late. And she talks about this classic Indian technique of drilling until it's ingrained, which basically meant riding around the synagogue parking lot over and over again.
With music or without?
Without music, she even mentions how the index cards and Sharpies they used for drills felt like distinctly Indian cultural artifacts.
Interesting.
But the funny thing is, she ended up hating biking.
Like really hating it.
Yeah, she blames it on those repetitive musicless lessons.
I can kind of see that.
And then there's the summer camp experience at Morse's Pond.
What happened there?
So there was this high dive situation with a guy named Scott.
Okay.
And Mindy was terrified to jump, but Scott kept pressuring her.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and she didn't want to embarrass her brother Vijay, who was watching.
All that sibling pressure.
I know, right? But the craziest part is that she later found out the camp was off limits because of contaminated soil.
What?
Yeah, and there had even been a murder there.
Oh my God.
Right? So it kind of adds this like dark humor element to the whole experience.
Yeah, it makes that feeling of unease totally justified.
Exactly. And the lesson she takes away from it is to question authority, even when it comes from adults.
Which is good advice, especially in the pre-cell phone era she's describing.
Right, because you couldn't just call your parents to come get you.
True.
And speaking of things that were different back then, she talks about how her high school experience was actually pretty uneventful.
Compared to what?
Compared to the dramatized versions you see in shows like 90210.
I see.
Like her life was way more normal than that.
Yeah, which makes sense.
And she even says she prefers the realism of a show like My So-Called Life.
Interesting.
And then there's this hilarious part where she talks about the song Jack and Diane.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
So, as the child of immigrant professionals, she just couldn't relate to the whole, like, wasteful frivolity of just hanging out and seeing what happens.
This didn't compute.
Exactly. She even imagines a song called Ningin and Ari about these hardworking immigrant teenagers who are studying and achieving academic success.
I love it.
It's a great way to illustrate those different cultural perspectives.
Totally.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about friendships, because Mindy really dives into the evolution of her own friendships. She starts by contrasting her friendship with Mavis with her earlier group of friends, JLMP.
Okay, and what was the difference?
Well, JLMP was like this really intense and exclusive group.
Ah, I see.
And Mindy gradually realized that she actually preferred spending time with Mavis, writing sketches, and bonding over their shared love of comedy.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, and there's this really awkward moment she describes at the Cheesecake Factory where she sees Jana Lauren and Polly hanging out without her.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's like that classic feeling of exclusion.
Totally.
But the realization she comes to is that a deep connection with one friend like Mavis is more valuable than a bunch of superficial connections.
Yeah, quality over quantity.
Exactly. And then she talks about her friendship with Brenda in college.
What was that like?
Brenda sounds like a ride or die kind of friend.
Like they've been through it all together.
Yeah, Mindy even says Brenda is the person who knows all her shit.
I love that.
They had this shared humor, private jokes, and this unwavering loyalty. It is. And their adventures in the theater department sound hilarious.
Like what?
Well, Mindy jokingly compares herself to Camilla Parker Bowles in terms of campus celebrity.
Oh, like she was the less glamorous half of the duo.
Exactly, but it's all in good fun.
Yeah.
And then they add Jocelyn to their friend group in New York.
Oh, fun a trio.
Yeah, and Jocelyn brings this like different, more laid-back energy to the group.
I love that.
It shows how different personalities can really complement each other.
Totally.
Now, moving on to Mindy's early career, she talks about how she had this dream of working at late night with Conan O'Brien.
Ah, classic.
Right, and she ended up getting an internship there, but it wasn't exactly what she expected.
Oh, no. Was it bad?
It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't like this amazing, glamorous experience.
Yeah, sometimes our idols don't live up to the hype.
Exactly. And then she talks about being jobless in New York with Brenda and Jocelyn living in this tiny, cramped apartment.
Oh, man, I can picture it.
Right, with the feral cats and the roaches.
Oh.
But even in that situation, there's this sense of camaraderie and shared experience.
Right, like we're all in this together.
Exactly. And then there's this funny story about her auditioning for Bombay Dreams.
How did that go?
Well, she realized that fame might not be as straightforward as she thought.
Yeah, show business is tough.
It is. And then she moves to Hollywood to pursue her dreams.
Okay.
And she's very open about wanting to be super famous and for everyone to love me.
It's refreshing how honest she is.
It is. And she even has this tongue-in-cheek list of what fame would bring, like never waiting in line for brunch.
Ah, yes, the perks of fame.
Right. And getting Lakers tickets and teenagers idolizing her look.
Of course.
But then she contrasts that with her own teenage obsession with Meg Ryan.
Oh, how so?
Well, she says that trying to emulate Meg Ryan's style sometimes made her look like a 1980s road comic.
Oh, no.
It's just so funny.
It is.
And then she talks about wanting the fashion police to constantly critique her, but for her not to care.
Oh, that's a good one.
And her batshit stuff becoming fashionable.
She's got big dream.
She does, and she even wants to be a sight gag on TV shows in her old age.
That's dedication to comedy.
It really is.
So what about her more general observations on life and stuff?
Oh, she has some great ones, like her philosophy on karaoke.
Oh, Kelly.
She believes in being a temporary DJ and avoiding long songs like American Pie.
solid advice.
And then she talks about the culture shock of moving to New York City.
I bet it was a big adjustment.
It was, and she eventually embraced this thing called the Irish exit, which is basically leaving a party without saying goodbye.
Oh, sneaky.
Yeah, but she got caught once, and it was a memorable lesson.
I can imagine.
And then for all the guys out there, she has this amusingly presumptuous guide on how to be awesome.
Oh, I need to hear this.
It's pretty funny. And she also talks about a bad text message breakup.
Oh, no, the worst.
I know, right? And she even includes these things I like about you and things I don't like about you lists for a hypothetical boyfriend.
Give me some examples.
Okay. She likes guys who are good spellers and who have a good relationship with their mothers.
Makes sense.
And she doesn't like guys who wear those Livestrong bracelets or who, quote, anchorman all the time.
Hilarious.
I know, right? And now let's talk about her early Hollywood experiences.
Okay.
She starts by describing the development of her play, Matt and Ben, which she co-wrote with Brenda.
What's it about?
So the premise is that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck received the script for Good Will Hunting out of nowhere.
Okay. Interesting.
And she talks about their writing process, which was basically a lot of arguing about Harry Potter and Jamie Kennedy.
Sounds productive.
Not really, but somehow they managed to finish the play, and it was actually a success.
Really?
Yeah, it premiered at the New York International Fringe Festival and then went off-Broadway.
Wow, that's impressive.
And there's this crazy story about Brenda breaking her nose backstage during a performance.
Oh my God.
But the show went on.
Of course the show must go on.
Exactly, but then they took the play to Aspen and it didn't go so well. Yeah, it's a reminder that the arts can be unpredictable.
For sure.
And then Mindy moved on to developing her own pilot called Mindy and Brenda.
Okay.
And she worked with Tom Berner, who's a big name in television.
That's huge.
It was a big step for her.
And what?
Well, then she had a meeting with Greg Daniels, who's the creator of The Office.
Oh, wow.
And he ended up hiring her as a staff writer.
That's amazing.
It was, but she describes the meeting as being kind of awkward.
How so?
Well, Greg Daniels is known for being very reserved, and he has this habit of, going off on tangents.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and Minjit was really insecure at first because she felt less experienced than the other writers.
Makes sense.
But she and Greg Daniels ended up having this really interesting dynamic.
What do you mean?
They would argue a lot about the show.
Like really argue?
Yeah, she almost quit over Chili Cold Open.
Oh, wow.
But then she went and got a manicure and came back.
Oh, Mindy.
I know, right? And her mom's reaction to the whole thing was basically, you owe everything to Greg Daniels.
Classic mom.
It is, and then she talks about her experience writing for Saturday Night Live.
Oh, that's another dream job.
It was, but it wasn't all sunshine and ruses.
What do you mean?
Well, she had this Weekend Update bit about Chad Michael Murray needing to get married, and it just didn't land.
Ouch.
Yeah, and then there was the Bill Hader pregnant cat sketch that bombed so badly she considered faking meningitis.
Oh, no.
I know, right? But the good thing is that Amy Poehler reached out to her with support.
Oh, that's sweet.
It was, and it shows that even in those competitive environments, there can be moments of genuine kindness.
For sure.
And she also talks about her admiration for Amy Poehler, which goes all the way back to Conan's earlier show.
Yeah, they're both comedic powerhouses.
They are, and Mindy even lists some of her favorite moments in comedy.
Like what?
Well, she mentions scenes from Anchorman, 30 Rock Bridesmaids, and of course, The Office.
Good choices.
She's got great taste.
And what about her personal style?
Well, she starts by talking about how she was often dressed like Bert from Ernie and Bert as a kid.
Oh my.
I know, right? And then she lists all these clothing items that stylists try to put her in that she hates.
Like what?
Like cap sleeves, billowing bohemian blouses, layers of chunky necklaces, Moomis daisy prints.
Yikes.
And she even tells the story about being in a college play where they put her in a muumuu because they didn't think she was attractive enough to wear a regular dress.
That's so mean.
It is, but she tells the story with humor.
Yeah, she's good at that.
And then there's the People magazine Most Beautiful photo shoot where they had to scramble to find a dress that fit her.
What happened?
Well, they ended up using Candace and safety pins to make it work.
Oh, wow. That's resourceful.
It was, and she embraced the least dressable title with good humor.
I love that.
And then she talks about the narcissistic photos on her BlackBerry.
Oh, everyone has those, right?
Right, like the zit check and the dress neckline assessment.
Totally.
And then she goes into these wild revenge fantasies.
Like what?
Like kidnapping her husband and taking down Al-Qaeda on The Voice. So over the top and hilarious.
I need to hear more about this Al-Qaeda fantasy.
Okay, so she imagines herself on The Voice with a plastic gun hidden in her Alexander McQueen clutch.
Amazing.
And she has these detailed instructions for her funeral.
Okay, like what?
Well, there's a chic, devastated dress code. No exes allowed unless they're Buddhist and genuinely grieving.
Specific.
And she wants Steve Carell's attendance to be noted for posterity.
Of course.
And then there's this elaborate gift bag.
What's in it?
Oh, just some essentials like a mini bottle of Kiehl's creme de coeur and a CD of her favorite songs.
Oh, maybe.
It's all very her.
It is.
And ultimately, I think the book is really about finding humor in the unfair situations life throws our way.
Yeah, it's about embracing the messiness of it all.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Mindy Kaling's Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me? We've explored so much.
She talked about body image, the awkward phases of adolescence and early career, the pursuit of dreams, the ups and downs of Hollywood, and so much more.
Yeah, and what I think is so great about Mindy is that even though she's in this unique world of Hollywood, her concerns and triumphs are really relatable.
Exactly, like everyone's felt that feeling of wanting to belong or the struggle of chasing your dreams.
And she reminds us that it's okay to be a work in progress.
And to find humor in the unexpected.
Exactly.
So as you go about your day, think about the unfair situations in your own life.
Ooh, good one.
Which ones might become funny stories someday, and which ones are you still working through?
It's all part of the human experience.
It really is. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to the Book Summary Podcast. Your support keeps us creating more content.